The most important meal of the day, second breakfast.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another Second Breakfast podcast. I'm Andy Roth alongside Phil Duvall. Say hi, Phil.
Hello, everybody. I don't know what that
And
was. That was my
I'm not-
low-octave radio voice. Hey!
In a
It's
world.
Phil and Andy on Second Breakfast. KDDL. How's it
No.
going?
No.
We're not doing any of that?
I can't.
Okay.
I can't give that to you.
You
I
can't
can't.
countenance that? I don't blame you. I wouldn't.
Nice. Well, I might just to
I
be able
can't
to
countenance
use.
such behavior.
I might just to be able to use the word countenance. I like it. So we're on episode 2 of our new direction. We're very excited about it. Guys, check out our website at secondbreakfastpodcast.com. It is awesome.
It's a honey of a website. I'm just
It
going to
is.
say that. It's
It
a
is.
honey of a website.
The archives aren't fully up yet, and by fully up, I mean they're basically not up at all. But when they are, which should happen within the next month, certainly within the next couple of weeks, hopefully, you will be able to search all of our podcasts by movies that we mention during them.
Crazy.
Bananas.
Or as the kids are saying, yeah, BANANAS.
Yes.
This thing is bananas.
This thing is bananas. But enough chit chat, tough guy, because we have a ton of movies coming out this weekend that we need to tell people about.
Does this look like my game face?
Your
My
game face is on. Totally.
I'm sitting cross-legged right now. I just want you to know. That means that I'm ready to do this.
Thank you for telling me that, because I wasn't sure why.
I don't know why it would mean that for other people, but for me, it very much means that.
Well, now I know. You never, ever have to
Gotta-
tell me that again.
Got a pen in my hand. Let's get to work.
Fantastic. So, the first movie coming out this week has already come out this week. I know it's the one that you're all looking forward to, and that is the second Percy Jackson movie. Percy Jackson, Sea of Monsters.
Yeah. I wish they would have just called it Percy Jackson, whatever, I guess. That'd be the best title ever. Percy Jackson or something.
Percy Jackson, our 3 main leads, have many, many better things to be doing. Because it's Alexander Daddario, Brandon T. Jackson, and Logan Lerman, who are, I mean...
You know, as far as I'm concerned, you just said, I don't know any of these people. I'm not trying to make fun of you. I don't know these people.
Alexander Daddario was the office assistant for Peter Krause and Dax Shepard in Parenthood that kissed him in the rain, right?
Oh, boy.
Brandon T. Jackson is the African-American who was not okay with Robert Downey Jr. in Tropic Thunder.
Got it.
And Logan Lerman was the lead in Perks of Being a Wallflower.
These 3 people all have better things to be doing.
There we go. But
Are we sure that it's Peter Krause and not Kraus?
I am almost positive because I think I read it, but I don't know.
If you read it somewhere, I believe you. It's just hard for me to
Well, right,
understand.
but even if I read it somewhere, I read it somewhere like a decade ago from Sports Night. So, 15 years ago from Sports Night, for crying out loud. So, the movie's coming out this week. Another movie that has also already come out, We're the Millers, with Jason Sudeikis, Jennifer Aniston, Emma Roberts, and some kid who is British, but doesn't sound like he's British well, I've actually already seen the movie. And it's how about this for the poster, right? It's better than it has to be. Huh?
Can I ask you a question, though, seriously?
Please.
Like, I know you have a free movie pass thing, but but your life counts for something. So why did you see that movie?
I enjoyed it.
Like, there were
Come
on.
I didn't enjoy all of it, but it wasn't like...
I did see in the Red Band preview when he gets his nards bitten by a spider,
Yes.
and that looked funny, but I saw it in the preview, so I'm all set.
The kids are worth the price of admission. Like
Okay.
Emma Roberts and Will.
Can we
Poulter,
talk
I think his name is.
Can we talk for a second about the advertising for this film and the advertising for this film and the advertising for it's going to bring me to it's what I call troubling advertising. Because they're showing We're the Millers, and if anybody doesn't know the plot of this movie is that there is this guy who's like a low grade drug dealer, like deals pot in the neighborhood, and the mega drug dealer played by Ed Helms inexplicably, but that's a whole other thing. I'm sure he does a great job because Ed Helms is always funny, but still, big time drug dealer. Anyways, So Ed Helms gets him or blackmails him into going down to Mexico and just picking up just a jolly truckload of marijuana and then bringing it back up. And he's got to pose as and he wants to pose. They have to pose to get back up the border as like your quote unquote typical American family, the Millers.
Yes.
And so Jason Sudeikis, and then he gets his local strip club dancer, exotic dancer. Like the word exotic comes into play in this situation. Played by Jennifer Aniston, who's just what an interesting career trajectory she has had in the past few years. And then this one girl, in her 20s, and this teenage boy. And in the advertising, it says like, it's supposed to be like, "Hi, I'm John Miller," or whatever, and then it says he's a drug dealer.
I know exactly what you're saying. I'm so excited to talk about this.
And then Jennifer Aniston goes like, "She's a stripper." And then like the girl is something along the lines of like, she's a criminal and a pathological liar.
Yes.
And then for the boy, it's like, he's a virgin. Wait, what? Like,
that's right. That's right.
Listen, I know that I'm religious, but seriously, is being a virgin when you're like, what, the kid's like 18?
Yeah.
So what they're trying to say, and I've seen the previews, is he's a ridiculously awkward indoor kid who doesn't know how to relate to women.
Yes. Yes.
But here's the thing. I was able to converse with people of all genders and sexes and whatevers and ages. I was a very outgoing, as far as I know, all that I could tell. I was a very gregarious, interactive. I was very awkward with girls if I liked them and wanted to ask them out.
Sure.
But I had tons of female friends because they all wanted to be my friends. We were friends, right? Which is a whole other depressing thing. And I was a virgin for a long time, and I was fine. So I find it really weird, like the whole like, drug dealer, stripper, he's a virgin.
Phil, I lost my virginity at the age of 6, and so not only am I disturbed by the fact that you were a virgin so late, but I dispute that you were as gregarious as you say, and I'm rethinking this entire arrangement that we have.
You understand implicitly what my problem with this is, right?
You know what? I do.
Can I be a grand?
Yes.
Can I be an old man who says, "Get off my lawn" for just a second?
Please do.
I can't believe this word's coming out of my mouth. But what kind of message does this send to the kids? No, I mean, like if you're a teenage boy and you're like you can't help but be subliminally, instructed. Is all I'm saying. I
don't disagree with you, Phil. But the thing is. This is not the only time that teenage boys are getting that message, or to be fair,
no. Listen, buddy,
girls,
I totally agree with you. I'm with you. I'm with you. It's the kind of thing that just doesn't help. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
being a virgin, being a 40-year-old virgin, now that's an interesting gimmick. And when you watch that movie, they even make a point of like. I actually think that movie handles the subject beautifully, tenderly, carefully.
I do too. Yes.
Better. Talk about a movie that's so much better than it has to be.
Absolutely.
But this, and I don't know how they handled it in the movie, but in the advertising, I was just like, well, this is a shame.
I mean, in the movie, it's not just, and I still don't care, right? But like, it's not just that he's a virgin. He's never kissed a girl at the age of 18, and so it's more than that. But at the same time, I agree with you. The problem is not. Well, the problem for me is not necessarily the message that it's sending, because at the end of the day, I just don't care. But it's that. Why is I don't understand why we're elevating that to the same level of anything.
That's it. That's it. That's it. It's inherently like. I wouldn't want my kid to grow up to be a drug dealer or a stripper or, let's face it, a virgin when he's 18. It's like, what?
Exactly. And it doesn't make any sense.
I guess what I'm saying to all of our virgin listeners, your virginity is a special treasure. Guard it.
Guard your carnal treasure.
Keep it secret. Keep it safe. Your car. What is that? That's don't tell me. That's Win a Date with Tad Hamilton.
Yes, it is.
Topher Grace saying. What does he call it? Your secret treasure?
Your carnal treasure. Guard your
carnal treasure. Guard your carnal treasure. And all I'm saying to all of you, with love in my heart in the name of Jesus, is guard your carnal treasure. I think that's all I'm saying. Big deal.
And as a non-religious person, I'm saying, give it away at your first opportunity, kids. Clearly, that's what I'm saying. Clearly, I am saying that. Can I say this, Phil? Can I say that? And I say this as someone who has seen the movie and who didn't hate it, and that's really, honestly, as far as I'm willing to go.
Sure.
The two times I laughed hardest were during the outtakes during the credits, and they were two really funny things. But as someone who all of that is true for, we have spent way too long talking about We're the Millers. Can we move on?
Yes. The only thing, yes. I just want to say, because I think we're going to talk about this movie later on. I'm moving on. I'm moving on.
Okay.
But just in terms of advertising, another little bugaboo that I had was I actually really loved, probably more than I should have. I don't know, but I really was. I should say I was very affected by the movie Kick-Ass.
Yes.
And yet the prude in me, seeing 20-foot high billboards with the word ass on them.
Sure.
I was definitely like, I'm not sure how I feel about that because. I don't know, because it's in public and a 7-year-old can just walk by it in the movie theater. And I thought that was kind of weird.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay.
That's all.
Well, we will talk about it probably next week when it comes out. But
okay.
See what I did there? So, the big movie, at least for me, coming out this week is Elysium, starring Matt Damon, directed by Neil Blomkamp.
Come on.
Who...
For me too, you know that.
Oh, I wasn't saying Phil clearly isn't cultured enough to enjoy this movie. If any of you have seen District 9, you know why we're excited. And if any of you haven't seen District 9, get your life together.
Oh my gosh.
Awesome. It's a blockbuster that will actually make you think, and Elysium looks to be the same kind of thing, and I'm just super excited for it. I just am. There
is a small piece of me that was not a huge fan of the Occupy movement. That's worried a little bit that this has been advertised very much as the 1% and the 99. But that's a small piece of me.
Yeah.
It's a small piece of me.
Yeah.
Everything inside of me when I watch these trailers, other than that little curmudgeonly political person, everything inside of me is just like, oh my gosh, I cannot wait for this movie to come out.
Sure. I did just read my first non-ecstatic review of it by Wesley Morris on Grantland. That makes me a little sad, but it's not going to stop me from seeing the first opportunity. You are a bigger fan. Here, how about this? I love Wesley Morris's writing. Oh, I do too. He's not a guy that I go by.
I have agreed with him on a movie almost 0 times.
Fascinating.
Like I don't like every time. I didn't like his. I'm trying to think of the reviews, but there's several reviews I've read of his, and I've just been like, nope.
Phil,
nope.
Look,
I'm sorry that you missed it.
Right. Look, I'm not saying that he's like my new Roger Ebert. I'm saying the things that I like, I want all 7 billion people in the world to agree with me on.
I know. I agree.
That's all I'm saying.
I'm not going to read a thing about this movie before I see it. I'm just going to see it.
Sure. The other big wide release coming out this week, to everyone's eternal shame, is the Disney movie Planes, set in the world of Pixar's Cars. I'm done talking about it. Now, we have a lot of movies coming out in limited release.
I can't believe you brought it up.
I'm a completist, Phil. I'm a completist, okay?
You are. You're a better man than I.
Well, folks, you heard it here first. So we have a bunch of movies that might be coming out near you, or it might be a couple weeks from now, but this is when they're getting their first limited release, so here we go. Amanda Seyfried as the early porn star Linda Lovelace in the biopic Lovelace, which looks great. Peter Sarsgaard's in it. Hank Azaria is in it. A ton of people.
I don't even know. You mispronounced Peter Sarsgaard. Sorry, you have to say it like that every time.
You know what? Phil, I'm sorry. I'm not on my game. You were wearing your game face and your legs are crossed and it threw me off.
My legs are crossed.
It looks. I mean,
are you excited? Are you excited about this movie? Actually,
I think she's a fantastically talented actress. Just from, I have loved her acting since Veronica Mars. She is wonderful. So, and she was one of the only really consistently watchable parts of the Les Mis movie that came out over Christmas. And
she was all. I actually know her from Big Love. I don't know her from.
Fair.
I know her from Les Mis, but really I know her from Big Love. I saw her in Big Love.
Sure.
I think she was also in the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. Yes? No?
I will not be able to answer that question.
I don't know, maybe not.
And I would always watch Peter Sarsgaard in anything that he does.
Well done.
Speaking of porn stars, the movie, and I say this just because I'm a completist, the movie The Canyons is coming out, directed by what's his name? Peter Schaefer. Peter Schaefer. That's the band leader. It's
it's Paul Schrader.
Paul Schrader. Thank you, Paul Schrader, who is an important director and screenwriter, a more important screenwriter. It stars Lindsay Lohan and a porn star. A dude who's a porn star. That's it. It's apparently terrible.
It was written by Bret Easton Ellis, who is a novelist who has also written screenplays, and he wrote the novel American Psycho, and he wrote Less Than Zero. He's a famous guy. There's a lot of things that make this movie notorious.
Right. None of them necessarily make it good.
No, sure. And Paul Schrader, let's be honest. I mean, as a director, he's a really good screenwriter.
That's right. That's right.
And by that I mean he wrote Taxi Driver almost 40 years ago. So whatever.
That's right. That's right. Moving on, there is a British romantic comedy that looks absolutely delightful, starring Rose Byrne and Rafe Spall, who has been in. He was in Shaun of the Dead, in Hot Fuzz. He was the interviewer in Life of Pi. It's called I Give It a Year, about these two people who get married and no one thinks it will last. And find the trailer. I Give It a Year. It looks absolutely adorable and hilarious. There is a movie coming out. David Gordon Green, who's a really interesting indie director, called Prince Avalanche, starring Paul Rudd and Emile Hirsch.
Yep.
Yes. And I don't even know what it's about, but the trailers focus on these two guys who are like drawing the painted dotted lines down the middle of a road. Yeah. And I mean, that cast and that director, they have me in hello, so I'm going to see it.
I don't know. David Gordon Green, I mean, he's an occasionally interesting director. He's also a guy who's made some garbage. But I've never once loved one of his movies.
Fascinating.
I've liked some of them. All the Real Girls, is it All the Real Girls? Is that what it's called?
Yes.
That movie destroyed me, obliterated me.
Sure.
I saw it once and will never see it again. I've seen it on TV and I got upset when it was on TV. I was like, I saw the words and I was like, no!
Right.
If you want to see a movie that cuts way too close to the bone for good old Uncle Phil, I think that's the one. Don't. So, anyways,
and
we'll see. I'm interested in Prince Avalanche, though. I really am.
Yeah, and the last one is a movie that Phil and I were talking about before we started recording. That just looks so weird and charming. It is a movie called In a World, and it's about It's about the world of voiceovers for trailers, written, directed, and starring an actress named Lake Bell, who I have literally never seen one of her movies. But
Very strange.
She's guest starred on New Girl, which I watch, The League, which I watch. So she's around, and I know what she looks like. But it's, as you might imagine, when you hear the phrase "in a world," it's always a man's voice, and it's about this woman who is trying to break into that. Her father is one of the people already in the industry. The trailer's great. I don't know when it's coming to Durham, but I am excited to see this movie.
I would love to go and see every single movie that the guy who plays her father is in, because he always plays the most comically obnoxious human beings.
Yes, indeed.
He plays a bore in such a way that I don't even know how to describe it. Like I don't know his name. I have to look it up, but he's a funny fellow.
Yes, actually, I would go further. He plays a bore spelled Boor and Bore. He's that guy.
Yep. He is, but he does it in a way
that isn't boring.
His name is Fred Melamed. His name rhymes, for God's sake.
Awesome. So that's what's coming out this weekend. Let's be honest. If you're right thinking you're going to see Elysium, and you're probably not seeing anything else, unless you have Movie Pass like I do, in which case you're going to end up seeing things like We're the Millers. And that's what I got for you. So, anything else to say about this weekend before we go on to Project Melway?
Be safe. Don't drink and drive. Guard your carnal treasure. Other than that, we're good. Pretty much. I think we're good.
And just to reiterate, kids, give it away as soon as you can. That's my stance. That's my stance. Having said that, I am against drinking and driving.
Oh, okay. I'm glad you only oppose me on certain things.
That's right. So it's time for the latest installment of a regular feature, Project Melway.
It's so good for it to be back.
I will talk about that. I agree with you. We'll talk about that. Project Melway, brought to you by Phil.
The Gibsonian Institute, Andy.
Who are they?
Well, it's funny you should ask. The Gibsonian Institute is a shadowy organization which has commissioned Andy and me to watch every single Mel Gibson movie in chronological order. Holy crap.
That is.
If you're new to the podcast, you need to understand how far in. The movie that we just watched was filmed or was released in 2003.
And this dude's been making movies since the very, very tail end of the 70s. So,
since 1978.
Yes.
So we are really, I mean, we're down to the Mel Gibson getting arrested drunk and driving period coming up really soon.
Very soon.
2 weeks.
Frankly, you know, when you watch as many movies of a single actor as we have, it goes past Stockholm syndrome. I think we are functionally Jonathan Pryce in Brazil. We are Winston in 1984, basically. Yeah, like we love Big Brother.
We're in.
I mean, that's it.
I am in. In fact, the whole time I was watching Singing Detective, I was like, why isn't Mel Gibson in this more?
That's right. Well, he is. Well, let's talk about it. So he is.
Oh my gosh.
Very, very charming, in sort of a goofy way. Which let's be honest.
First time.
We don't see him play goofy. You know, like he. I mean, there are moments. The thing that comes closest for me, is probably Riggs. Because he has those moments, but those moments are always Riggs being, and by the way, if you don't know, and you should, Riggs is his character in the Lethal Weapon series. He's being goofy for a purpose. He's you know, keeping a criminal off balance, or
he always manages to be attractive when he's goofy in the Lethal Weapon movies. In this movie, he has a bald wig and huge glasses, and he looks a lot like Robin Williams in 1 Hour Photo. I kept thinking that the entire time I was watching it.
Well played.
And
I didn't make a connection, but I agree with you. The Singing Detective, a short plot synopsis. Robert Downey Jr. plays someone with extraordinarily bad psoriasis, which has basically left him unable to function. He is in the hospital, and he's sort of a failed author, and one of his old stories is a musical about a singing detective. And so it's like a film noir thing. And basically the lines of reality blur. So he becomes the singing detective, and people who are in the real world show up in his flashbacks. Or fictional world, and people from the fictional world show up in his real world. And sort of things blend together by the end. And it is a weird freaking movie. Weird.
The advertising for this movie should be The Singing Detective. What the H?
Yeah, totally. Yes.
It is a singularly confusing movie.
It's true.
My wife, you know, it's interesting. It's not a bad movie?
It's not. It is not a bad movie. It's not a bad movie.
I read Roger Ebert's review, and then my wife, who had not read the review but was watching the movie, said exactly what Ebert said.
What is that?
Who did they make this movie for?
It's true.
And that's a really interesting question. Like, it's not a bad movie, and it's and the way that it fails, and it fails many ways.
Yes.
But the way that it fails is it's an ambitious failure.
Yes.
It's a nuanced, complicated failure. Mm-hmm. It's a movie that's trying to really delve into something dark and real and unflinching in a way that is by playing with surrealism, and has a great cast, great performances.
Yes.
It reignited my old flame, my old crush on Katie Holmes.
Nice. It fanned the flames of my has never gone away crush on Robin Wright.
I think when Robin Wright and Katie Holmes are standing next to each other, my eyelids almost exploded. I don't because I had in college basically. I mean, I think of Katie Holmes marrying Tom Cruise as my Pearl Harbor. Like that was the moment in my life when I was just. It was a day it's a day that'll live in infamy. Like I remember being like, well, okay, I get that that's insensitive, but I mean, look it's been a while. It's a day I was legitimately, because I was single, I was legitimately angry. Like I get that she's taller than me and would never have dated me, but she's like 5'11" or something. But I was like deeply
That's not
like
okay. I
was like, oh Katie. Like, oh Katie. It hurt. Because she married a crazy person, and then when they got divorced, I was like, "That's right." And by that time, I was married, so it was too late for me. But it just gave me hope for the world, you know.
Sure.
I think everyone our generation is in love with Robin Wright.
Absolutely. Oh.
Because of Princess Bride.
Yes.
Some people maybe because of Forrest Gump, but then you're idiots. But because of Princess Bride, she is Princess Buttercup.
Yes.
She is the paragon of pure beauty, love, loyalty, and affection.
Yes. Yes.
And Robin Wright.
That is so well said. She is like those formative years when I wasn't having crushes in the romantic way that I did, in middle and high school, but when I saw Princess Bride for the first time, I was still like, she's it, right?
It's not even, you're right. It's not even a crush.
Right.
It's because we were like 7 or 8. It's like formative. It actually is one of the things that gets your synapses firing and teaches you what beauty is. That's what Robin Wright has done, I think, for a whole generation of men.
I would agree with that.
And what's amazing about her, and I don't know for a fact, but from the looks of her, she doesn't look like someone who's had surgery. She doesn't look like someone she looks like she has naturally aged.
Yes.
And she has aged perfectly.
Oh,
that I mean she looks older.
Uh-huh.
But she is exquisite.
Right. She's not freeze dried. She has the sentence "she has aged perfectly." Every word of that is true.
Right.
She has aged. It's perfect.
She's exquisite.
Yes.
She is exquisite.
She does a lot of interesting things in this movie because she is simultaneously like this femme fatale, but also like the stalwart woman who stands by her man. Yeah. Because of the way that she weaves in and out of the fictional world and the real world. Yeah. So that's a fun sort of acting challenge, and I say acting challenge, and you know what this thing reminds me of, and I want to go back to what you said, like how the movie fails. You know what it reminds me of, actually? It reminds me of like the final project in an acting class, because all of these actors are given really interesting things to do that have nothing to do with any other actor. Even if their storylines intersect, it's like they're in, like, say there are 10 main people in the movie, there are 10 different movies going on. Nobody is in the same movie as anybody else.
You're right. That's a beautiful comparison. And but it leads to part of the problem. You brought it up as a final project, is the movie almost felt like a project.
Yes.
And I don't mean to denigrate the director who played Rodney Dangerfield's son in Back to School. This is how you should know him. Nice. But it to me wasn't a sure enough hand. It didn't feel like the person. I think for this movie to be successful, it needed someone who was nothing less than a master.
Yes.
And apparently, I was reading about this, that there was a point when Robert Altman was attached to direct Dustin Hoffman in it.
Whoa. Okay.
And while I am not a huge Robert Altman fan,
right,
I think he could have pulled it off.
Yes.
And I think you would have needed someone that level, that caliber, to pull this movie off. Now, that being said, as an actor, I think Robert Downey Jr. is phenomenal.
He's great in it. He's really good. This was right around. Was this the first movie back for him?
Basically.
It was certainly one of them, if not the first. After sort of the pit of substance abuse and depression or whatever else he had going on.
Yeah.
This was the beginning of his
Yeah.
road back, and you can
Yeah.
see, and you know what his performance is. It is a performance confident enough to carry the rest of the movie, even as
Yep.
zany and unhinged as it gets. And what you needed was a director that confident, you know.
You're right, but you need to have an actor who is in every frame, and you're okay with that, and you are with Robert Downey
Yes.
Jr. There's just
Yes.
he just is, and this was his first movie back, or one of his first movies back, and it's very clearly he could tap into it. This movie has a lot of stuff about a guy going through his own personal hell.
Yes.
And sort of being getting out of it through a surreal channel, and you know that's sort of Downey Jr.'s story as well. Now you got that going on, and it's based on this guy Dennis Potter wrote it. He originally wrote I think a book about it. Definitely wrote a miniseries back in the BBC, which I have never seen, so I don't have to do the whole line about like, oh, the British version was much better. It was so much more layered and nuanced and blah. I don't have to say any of that because I didn't see it. I'm delightfully unencumbered by truth. So all I know is that this guy Dennis Potter, he had this kind of psoriasis, and he actually there were points in his life where he wasn't able to use his hands. He was a writer who wasn't even able to use his hands at all, and they had to tape or fasten pencils to his stubby hands to so that he could write. That's to the level that he got to. Amazing.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yes. Truly amazing.
So it's autobiographical on several levels.
Right. I am of two minds about the original adaptation. One, I really, really, really want to see it because I love Michael Gambon, and he plays the singing detective at the Robert Downey Jr. character. And I also really, really, really don't think I could handle, if the mood is the same, I don't think I could handle an entire miniseries of that mood.
I can't imagine that it would be 8 hours of that. I just can't imagine.
I agree with you, but good Lord. Like, it just...
What Andy means is that the movie is dizzying. It's very, like, I think what you're talking about is it's very dizzying. It shoots back and forth between real life and in a fantasy world, and really basically two different fantasy worlds.
Yes.
Or real life, his real life, his past life, like his history, his childhood, and a fantasy world, and they get all intertwined. And it's like, and musical numbers.
And musical numbers. Which they make no... This was really interesting about it.
The Katie Holmes-inspired Mr. Sandman music number was life-changing for me.
It is, yes. The musical number is really interesting because they make absolutely no attempt for you to think that it's anything other than them. They're not even really lip-syncing.
They're not even connected. No, they're kind of lip-syncing to... But the original song, not to them, not to them singing it. They're lip syncing to this version of Mr. Sandman by the Chordettes that you know.
Right. Yes,
it's very, it's really, or like an Elvis song, and it's Elvis singing. There's no pretense of anything else. It's very interesting in that way.
Yes.
There's also no pretense that the songs have anything to do with the movie at that given point.
Right.
Some do kind of.
Songs, right. The first couple songs, I was like, what is the metaphor that they're going for with this song? And then I just gave up. And I don't say that in a bad way. I was just like, well, clearly there isn't really an attachment.
Yep.
Or let me put it this way. If there is, I am not smart enough to ascertain that attachment.
Yeah.
Let's talk. Let's talk about Mel in this. And I think I'm done talking about this movie. But here's what was interesting about Mel in this movie for me.
The MG? The
MG. The original, the OMG.
Nice. OMG.
Thank you.
Original Mel Gibson.
He is flat out a supporting character in this movie, which is the first time in a really long time that's been true. He was billed as Mel Gibson in what was it, the hotel?
Summer City.
Well, no, right.
Oh, $1 Million Hotel, which was about...
Hotel. And he was a super important character in that. Like, he was absolutely central to that movie.
Right. In this movie...
He is not. He is a supporting character.
Although...
Yes.
I think the most affecting scenes in the movie end up being the scenes with him. Now,
I agree with that.
Because he's the only one... It's very strange, all the doctors and nurses basically hate Downey Jr.'s character, Dark. Don Dark, or whatever his name is, Richard Dark.
Yeah.
Dan Dark, whatever, Dan Dark. except for the psychotherapist played by Mel Gibson, Dr. Gibbons. Dr. Gibbons, that's interesting. I never thought about that. Gibson playing Dr. Gibbons. But Dr. Gibbons is legitimately interested in Don Dark or whatever. Again, I don't care. Dan Dark. But interested in Downey Jr. But everybody else hates him and is annoyed by him.
You know, I'm really glad that you brought that up. And what I mean by brought it up is how affecting some of the scenes are. And let me tell you why I think that is. And I'm formulating it as I say it. We talked about, you mentioned that you want an actor who can be in every frame pretty much and you don't mind, and Robert Downey Jr. is that guy. Yep. And the reason he is that guy in many movies. The reason he is that guy in this movie is because we've talked about how zany the movie gets. Even when he is at his zaniest, there is something about him that anchors, right?
You're right.
And the only person, not the only person, but the only person who has similar things to do, because Robin Wright anchors it as well, but she isn't given as much to do. The only person who is given sort of goofy, zany things to do that also anchors it is Mel Gibson. He does a really nice job of being goofy without leaving the realm of possibility, right?
Yeah, I think you're. I mean, he's a goofy character, but
he's not a caricature.
He's not a caricature, although he very, very easily could be.
Yes.
Even by the way you look at him, you're like, this is going to go goofy, and he manages to keep it in some real place.
Yes.
And not only that, but I think the other thing that's really interesting about their interactions is not just that other characters all matter, but every other character is talking about him. And when they talk to him, they're very ginger. Mm-hmm. And he's the only person who just straight up talks to Robert Downey Jr.'s character. Yeah. And just addresses him. Yes. And that scene where they do the word association
is great.
It's a flat out great scene.
Yes. Yes.
Beginning to end, that scene flat out is so, and it was like theater. And it was like the best kind of theater, which isn't necessarily good film, but in this case it's maybe the most electric part of the whole movie actually. This whole movie that's got all of this visual gymnastics and exciting and crazy surrealism.
Yeah.
The most exciting moment is two guys sitting playing word association game back and forth.
Yeah.
And it is and it's great. I mean, and it's Downey Jr. And I think it's really interesting that movie formed a friendship between Mel Gibson and Robert Downey Jr. that lasts to this day. And Downey Jr. has always been one of those guys who supported Gibson. Mm-hmm. and stuck with him and said, no, this guy's solid. He's my guy. And that's a really interesting. I mean, I'd love to know more about that. I guess obviously our Project Melway just makes us want to know more about Mel Gibson in a really weird way. But
right, in a really weird, the FBI should probably be tracking her emails kind of way.
Right. So anyways, I don't know. So, but the Downey Jr. and Mel Gibson relationship in the movie is maybe my favorite part of the movie, other than just seeing Robin Wright doing anything.
Just anything.
And again, 2003 era Katie Holmes, I don't have words for the way I feel.
Here is how just transcendent these two women are, everybody. Carla Gugino is in this movie, and we haven't
even mentioned her!
I mean, what are you going to do? So there's
I have loved Carla Gugino since The Son-in-Law with Pauly Shore. That's how long I have loved her.
That is longer than I have loved her. And I'll just be honest. That's longer than I've loved her. Can we be done talking about this movie?
I think what I want to say in closing.
Yes.
An interesting choice for Mel Gibson. He produced it or co-produced it, and I want to know. I would love to know if he was just. I mean, he's always in. Not always, but it seems like he's always in the movies he produces, and really, from I'm trying to remember what movie it was. From Hamlet on, he's been a co-producer on almost every single movie he's been in, with the exception, I think, of Signs.
Right.
He may have even been a co-producer of What Women Want. I mean, Icon Productions. It's a very interesting, and there's a level of that I find interesting, and a level of that I'm like, how much of a control freak are you about your stuff? It makes me a little bit nervous for, Tom Cruise being the producer on every single thing that he makes. You're like, all right, settle down there, buddy. Maybe just be in a movie.
Right. Wait. Will Smith produced After Earth? I am shocked.
Right, and put his child in it? What are we talking about here?
Shocked. Right.
So
yeah,
I think I'm interested in that sort of level of control of one's own career. It makes me a little bit curious. But I will say, like, I wonder what, because it's not a given that he would play this role at all. So I wonder if he was just like, well, I'm going to produce it. Let's see if there's anything in here for me, and then decided to have fun. Like, I'd love to know what got him to make this. Like, and I think
just real quick, I really like what you said. Like, it's not a given that he would play this part. Like, there are other parts
it's
he
the
could
Mel Gibson role.
And like, to give you an idea of what this character is like, Richard Jenkins, who you all should know, he's an older actor. He was in Jack Reacher. He was in The Visitor. He was the dad who died at the beginning of 6 Feet Under. He's tall, lanky, older actor.
In House on the Hill or Cabin in the Woods.
Cabin in the Woods, right. He was one of the two. He and Bradley Whitford were the two technicians that you meet at the beginning of the movie. It's like, if you got him drunk, like some of his looser roles, this is the role that Richard Jenkins would play.
Very strange decision. And I think I also want to point out just a phenomenal cast from every single person you see as an actor that I love.
Yes.
John Polito, one of my favorite character actors of all time, a Coen Brothers mainstay who is a genius. Adrian Brody, who won an Oscar and promptly disappeared forever.
This was the movie he did after The Pianist, I think.
It is the movie he did after The Pianist, but clearly before he won the award for it.
Sure.
Like, this movie was clearly in the can.
Right.
And he's a really wonderful performer.
I agree with you.
Where are you, Adrian Brody? I made Splice. Okay. Yes. So, anyways, and there was, oh boy, that's not a thing. And who else? I guess that, and then Alfred Woodard's in it, and I mean, you just look, and everybody you see is famous people. It's crazy.
Who is that imperious nurse? The like, I want to say she was the mom. From Big, but I don't think she was the mom for Big.
She's not, and I know she's not, and I know exactly what you're talking about. And she's
the mom from something.
She plays somebody angry almost all the time.
Yes.
It's just something that she does.
In the late 80s and early 90s, if you needed an angry mom, this is the woman you called.
I'm going to look her up.
Okay.
It's so I think what I want to say in actual conclusion for this movie.
For crying out loud.
No, come on, we're having fun. It's just that I think. Oh, and I wanted to mention Jeremy Northam, who was in Winslow Boy, one of my favorites.
Yes.
And he's almost completely, and it's not his fault, almost completely forgettable in this film, which I don't understand, but he just kind of is.
That's true. That is true. He is,
It's very, I would almost say wasted, which makes me very sad.
Mm-hmm.
Her name is Amy Aquino.
Okay.
Is the name of the female who was troubling, and she's grumpy in everything. She was in Big Love. She was grumpy in that, I'm sure. She was on Monk. She was on ER. I mean, any TV show. First of all, if there's a TV show you've ever watched, she was in it. She was.
She was.
You need to see her in Curb Your. When you start finally in your life watching Curb Your Enthusiasm, you will love her.
She's Mrs. Schreiber from Freaks and Geeks.
She's Neil Schreiber's mom.
That's it.
Oh my goodness. This is a show. There are so many shows that fail just in general, and they fail trying to be pleasing. They fail trying to fill connect the fill what do you call it? Like, check the boxes of a movie so that they can be entertaining or blockbustery or any of this. This movie fails ambitiously and artistically. It fails trying. It fails trying to do something, and that sounds like damning with faint praise. I'm not. I'm praising with faint damn, I guess. I think is what I'd say.
I like it.
It is.
I like it.
It is not a great film. It will confuse you, but I wouldn't say it's terrible. And I think that I actually feel like now that I know what's going on, if I saw it again, I probably wouldn't. But if I saw it again, I would be more. I think I'd almost be more interested in it the second time.
Sure. Yeah. You'd be sort of right. You'd be sort of inoculated against the weird.
And I could actually look for the movie.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm thinking that's what 8-hour miniseries would do. And I haven't seen it. Maybe that's what the benefit would be. Is that 8 hours in, after the second hour, you get the format and you're ready for it, and you can actually spend time with the characters.
I mean, assuming it's good, I think that's probably precisely what happened. So
we're done with this.
The next 3 weeks of Project Melway.
Tell me.
We are coming
huge.
to the end
It's a
here.
huge 3 weeks.
It is. The Passion of the Christ. the single week I am most dreading in Project Melway.
I want to tell you that we are dreading this week so much, both of us, that when we first took on Project Melway, we were only going to do movies that Mel Gibson starred in rather than movies that he directed, just so we could skip Passion of the Christ and Apocalypto, which I love Apocalypto, but we literally, the Jew and the priest, do not want to talk about Passion of the Christ with each other. Like, it's very clear that we don't want to have this conversation. Next week's going to be a barn burner. I also don't want to watch it again.
Neither do I. Passion of the Christ. Week after that, Apocalypto. Week after that, another adaptation of a British miniseries, Edge of Darkness. It's kind of an odd trend in Mel Gibson's career.
These three movies, I mean, it gets dark, people. Have you seen Edge of Darkness?
I haven't.
Okay. We walked out of that movie, my wife and I was like, there's no edge. All darkness. all dark. It's one of the darkest movies I have ever seen in my life. The next 3 weeks are going to be an interesting 3 weeks for Project Melway.
That is certainly one adjective you can use. Passion of the Christ, Apocalypto, and Edge of Darkness, folks. That is the end of no, it's not the end. Those are the next 3 weeks in store for us and for you as part of Project Melway.
Yep.
There we go.
Let's move on.
That'll do it for the Project Melway segment of today's podcast. So the last thing that we have for this week is the mailbag. A couple of questions we're going to pull out of the old bag filled with mail from our viewers and listeners. Can
I say something?
Second Breakfast Nation. What if I
say
something? No?
I wouldn't say it because I listen to my friends.
Nice. Please go ahead.
Mailbag.
Very good.
Very excited about that.
Yes. It's been a while. Again, this is our first week back after a hiatus, folks, and it's been honestly, it's been a while since I've answered a mailbag question, and I am my sense of self-worth is extremely bound up in answering questions for other people. So if you have questions for the mailbag, send them please to secondbreakfastpodcast@gmail.com, and we will answer your question on the air. First,
for those of you who are new to the podcast, in the mailbag, you send us things in the virtual mail, and we pretend that we have a bag of it, and then we answer the questions that you send us.
It's crazy.
I was worried that people wouldn't understand.
We haven't seen anyone else on the internet doing anything like this.
Well, it's revolutionary stuff.
We are iconoclastic, if nothing else. From friend of the podcast, and this is what he wants us to call him, Dr. Awesome. Hello, Doctor. Is that a medical degree, or did you get a PhD in something?
Like if someone said, "Is there a doctor in the house?" Would you actually raise your hand?
Right. Like.
Would you
in other words,
useful?
Are you a doctor? Are you a doctor who is awesome, or do you have a doctorate in awesome?
Right?
I mean,
because the funny thing is, if you're a doctor who is awesome, great. But if you have a doctorate in awesome, you're probably not useful to me at all.
That's probably true.
Okay.
Or are you just like a doctor of something bizarre, and your last name happens to be Awesome? You're like from the East Hampton Awesomes.
I love it. Genius.
From Dr. Awesome.
Tell us, Dr. Awesome.
Hey, guys. I'd like to know what you think about Guillermo del Toro and how he likes to go back and forth between more artful films like Pan's Labyrinth and big-budget action films like Hellboy and the forthcoming, this was written a while ago, Pacific Rim. Should we expect Hollywood directors to stay consistent with their movies, or do you guys favor his more varied approach? Best, Dr. Awesome.
Well, Dr. Awesome, partially I feel like you haven't listened to our show much, even though I know you have, because you talk about it, and we've talked about it before during our regular Awesome consultations, during my Awesome physicals. And I think that what's funny is like Andy so clearly has the biggest crush on Guillermo del Toro that anyone has ever had on anyone ever. That it's funny when you're like, how do you feel about him?
Here's the deal, real quick. The way I disagree with you is I think you undersold it. I actually think you undersold my feelings for Guillermo del Toro. Like I think that's where I come down on that.
Andy goes through Guillermo del Toro's trash, you know what I mean?
I mean, you can't prove that, but whatevs.
But why should I?
Continue.
I don't need to. Right.
That's right. That's right.
You can't prove that, and that's a small point, a small fraction of it. So, look, Andy and I are both fans of the man. I think you're more of a fan than I am. You've also seen everything he's done, and I have not.
I haven't seen everything he's done, but most of it.
What haven't you seen?
I haven't seen Kronos, actually.
Oh, I assumed that you had for some reason.
No, I need to.
Okay.
I need to. God, I saw Mimic, for crying out loud.
Did he make that movie?
He did.
Is that's the one with that's not Natasha Henstridge. That's Species.
No, that's Species. It's
Mimic is the one
Mira
with Mira Sorvino.
Yes.
I have seen that as well.
And the giant killer subway roaches.
Sure.
Why not?
Hey, it's a problem.
Yeah, clearly.
So anyways, look, here's I think I have a pretty quick answer to this, actually, which is I love what Guillermo del Toro does with his career, because I don't think of him as like conscientiously switching between art house flick and big budget movie. Mm-hmm. What I see is this is a guy who loves making movies, and it seems to me every single movie he has made was a movie he wanted to make and was excited to make. Mm-hmm. This is not Martin Scorsese making The Color of Money so that he could get financing for Goodfellas.
Right. Right.
Or maybe it was To Last Temptation of Christ he did that for. But this is not that. This is not someone making Smurfs so that they can put an extra wing on their house or send their kids to Dartmouth. That's not what's going on here.
I think that's very well said. Here's how I'm going to disagree with you. I don't disagree with you. I take issue with the question itself. Okay. J'accuse! Here's the deal.
Okay.
I don't think he's switching back and forth at all. If you look at the big budget movies he's made, Blade 2 was really weird. Like, there is no reason you would look at the original Blade and think a sequel would be like what Blade 2 is. There is no reason that you would assume, let's be honest, why would you ever make a movie of Hellboy? And then Hellboy, and especially Hellboy 2, that goes some really weird places. He makes movies that are, and I'm not saying all his movies are the same, far from it, but I don't think he is not, to use another director who I like, all right? He's not Ron Howard, okay? You never forget you are watching a Guillermo del Toro movie, ever. He brought the same sensibility to Blade 2, to mimic. I can't say that because I barely remember Mick. He brought the same sensibility to Blade 2 that he brought to Pan's Labyrinth. It was a different story, so it feels different.
There's actually almost a Tim Burton-esque reality to that, where Tim Burton's visual sensibility shows up in all his movies. Well, back when he had anything remotely resembling a sensibility.
Indeed.
But
well
I think you're probably right, and I think that but I still know what he means in the sense that, and I think you and I are actually in the same agreeing. And I think the thing is, it's very clear that his hope for Pacific Rim or Hellboy, or the studio's hope for Pacific Rim or Hellboy, would be different than their hope for Devil's Backbone or Pan's Labyrinth.
No and it's question.
Making a movie in English language action film versus a Spanish language, whatever you'd call Pan's Labyrinth film, children's horror film. I don't know.
You're right. You're right.
I think, but it is different. I mean, it's funny because Steven Soderbergh does this as well. But the funny thing is, I just think that Steven Soderbergh, rotates between making movies I'll watch and movies I will never watch.
Right.
Is really what
his genre is movies for Phil and movies not for Phil.
His movies that are just for him, they really are. I feel like he's the only one who watches them. I'm not interested at all.
Good for him for getting to a place in his career where he can do that.
But I don't feel like Guillermo del Toro is choosing to make an uninteresting. Here's the thing: he is the master of his own destiny, so to speak. He is the one who he clearly has creative control over the Hellboy series and Pacific Rim, and they're his movies for better and for worse. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And good for him for doing it.
Yeah. I would actually go further. As a producer, he finds people not with his exact sensibility, because no one has his exact sensibility. But when he produces movies like The Orphanage or Mama, he what kind of movies Del Toro likes to watch. Let me put it
Yeah.
that way, you know?
Yep.
And they're the
Well
kind
said.
of movies he makes and the kind of movies he produces. I want to bring up another director because to be perfectly honest, we haven't answered your actual question yet, and your question is, do we want directors to stay stuck in a certain thing or to stay
True to a specific form?
Yes. There's a director named Alan Parker who you may or may not have heard of, but you absolutely have heard of some of his movies, and they are all over the place in terms of genre. He made Midnight Express. He made the movie, just the first two. He made Midnight Express.
I thought Oliver Stone made that. I guess Oliver Stone wrote it.
Sure.
He wrote it. Oliver Stone wrote it.
Midnight Express. The next movie he made was the movie version of Fame.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
No. Then he did the movie of Pink Floyd's The Wall.
Sure.
He made a movie that is just very weird and dark and unusual called Angel Heart with Mickey Rourke and Robert De Niro.
Oh, that movie is god awful.
He made Mississippi Burning. Then he made skipping around. Then he made The Commitments. Then he made Evita, and then he made Angela's Ashes. He is all over the place with his genres. And I mean, I disagree with you about Angel Heart a little bit. I don't think it's god awful. I just don't think it's very good. But how to put this? I don't think the direction was the problem with that movie.
No. Here's the thing about it. Angel Heart has a really big cult following, and I hate it, and I didn't like it. And then when I found out that there were people who like talk about it like it's special, I was like, oh no, I don't dislike it. I hate it.
Nice.
Like
Fair
it
enough.
took it. Like the fact that people didn't just completely and utterly shut that movie down made me hate it more.
Fair. But this is a guy who, it depends on what you mean, Dr. Awesome, because Alan Parker is not a celebrated director today. And it seems like there aren't a lot of people who are doing what Guillermo del Toro is doing who are, like let's be honest, Steven Spielberg doesn't dabble in just a ton of different genres. Martin Scorsese probably comes closest, but
I think Martin Scorsese is a really good example. I mean, although he doesn't make
That's right.
overtly commercial films really ever at this point, he basically gets by on getting to be Martin Scorsese. But I do think, I mean, I think I don't think we really see. Here's what I think I like. This is what I want to say. I'm a fan of personalities. Okay, I'm not as much a fan of specific music genres as I am of specific artists. So I love Bob Dylan, and he's all over the map musically. I mean, they're all not totally all over the map. I mean, he's not doing hip hop for God's sake, but I mean, he's all over the map. You know, I mean, he does, and his sound is all over the map. But I love his personality, and I want to see where he's going to take me as an artist. And I'd say the same thing. And if I was just expecting another folk album, I mean, you're not going to get that from him. Like AC/DC, you know what you're going to get basically.
That's right.
And that's great, but you know what it is basically. And to some degree, Bon Jovi and groups like that, you know what you're going to get. You know. But I'm interested in where like Dylan's going to take me all different places, and I'm interested in like different personalities. And to that degree, so Guillermo del Toro, to me, it's like I don't care what he wants to do. I'm interested in it. I mean, I'm interested in what's next from that guy. You know, or same with Tarantino. It's like, what do you want to do? Do that, or the Coen brothers?
Yeah, there's something there's something else that you're touching on, and that is like. For example, the group that is more maligned than any other for singing the same thing over and over again of our lifetimes, Hootie and the Blowfish. Okay?
Oh, I thought you were going to say U2, but go ahead.
Yeah, that's another conversation.
No one maligns them. Everyone worships them for singing the same song over and over again for 30 years.
Fine.
Go ahead.
Hootie and the Blowfish musically and talent-wise, they cannot also. But Hootie and the Blowfish cannot be Bob Dylan. Right?
Right.
Michael Bay, right, cannot be Martin Scorsese. He can't even be Guillermo del Toro, which I think is really interesting about del Toro. But like we tend to think of directors as being in charge of more than just the movie they're in charge of, when sometimes they're not even in charge of that. These people get typecast just like actors do. Right? And you have to go where the work is. If you really want to make a romantic comedy, but your name is Eli Roth, you're not going to be hired to do something that isn't a horror movie right now. You're just not. right?
Interesting.
So you have to sort of make your bones, right? And Spielberg made his bones in science fiction and things like that, and then he branched out. Scorsese, I mean, he did. I mean, I guess if you want to talk about like he did explorations of the anti-hero or something like that.
Fair enough. Right.
And then he branched out. What I think is particularly interesting about Guillermo del Toro is he hasn't. I mean, except for the fact that I don't think he switched it up all that much because I think he brings the same sensibility. He's actually sort of sidestepped that, which I think is really interesting. He doesn't. He's managed to avoid being pigeonholed in the loosest sense of the word.
Interesting.
Or not in the loosest sense, in the most specific sense of the word, I guess. But just because directors are presumably, although again, even this isn't always true, the final word, they are the word of God on their movie set, it doesn't mean they're in charge of their careers, right? So it's great to say, like, I want everybody to be like Guillermo del Toro, or Quentin Tarantino, who's done different genres, right? But like that, they are the exception, not because they're talented enough to do it, although they are. They're the exception because they are able to do it. Like, fate has allowed them to do it that way. If that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. I think that's interesting. And I mean, and it goes back to that. It's more about the personalities. And I'm trying to think now of like what directors have gone like, I'm going to make this. I'm going to sell out so that I can make the personal movie I want to make.
Right.
You know, I almost see actors as doing that more than directors.
Right. When that isn't necessarily true, but you're absolutely right.
I'm not sure why the studios gave Guillermo del Toro the money they gave him to make Pacific Rim. None of his movies have been incredibly profitable.
You're right.
They gave him an incredible amount of money for that movie.
You're right.
And it will end up. What's funny is maybe because they realize. I mean, this is an interesting thing. This is a movie that will absolutely become it has already become a huge hit in other countries.
Right.
It was never a huge hit here.
Right.
Usually movies that are a huge hit in other countries are huge hits here as well.
Right.
But this movie is not a huge hit here, but will be a huge hit internationally.
Right.
And they'll probably get him to make a sequel, or he'll get to make a sequel.
Right.
Because of how big it was in China and Japan and parts of Europe. Amazing. Yeah. Kind of amazing. Anyways, that's all I have to say.
I hope he ends up producing that because there are so many of his. No one acquires projects like GDT, so I'm ready for him to start making his own stuff. He's got I want to say he's got a haunted house movie next. What?
He does. Right.
Crimson Peak, right? Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. So Dr. Awesome, I hope that answers your question. We're gonna do one more question today. And that is, it's a Phil, this is all you. It's a religious themed question.
Okay.
Because I think if we push this to next week when we're also already doing Passion of the Christ,
that's too much.
I might explode.
I understand.
I might explode. So, from my good friend, from when I was very, very young, John Strohmeyer. Hello, John.
Hello, John.
Gents, though this is more for Phil already. I mean, John and my chopped liver, as I was listening to your Signs podcast today, an earlier episode of Project Melway,
well done.
I wondered if there wasn't another religious meaning in the movie, because that movie lacks for religious symbolism. Is it possible that the water saving MG and family is an adaptation of the story of the baptism of John? MG's faith is restored following an application of water, and the last alien evil demon is defeated by what is pretty explicitly a baptism. Touché. But I might be grasping at straws here. Not that particular one. Phil, I've forgotten much of my catechism, and I'm far too lazy to Google up the details for myself, so please shed any light on this that you can.
I'm glad you came to me, John. Terrible question. Not a good question at all. So if no one ever says that, everyone's like, that's a great question. That's not a very good question. Here's why. There's no biblical, and you've clearly forgotten more than your catechism, John. I'd like to go lighter on you, but it's not my fault that you just stopped going to church. Here's the deal. There's no story in the Bible about the baptism of John. Like, that's not something that happens. When John the Baptist shows up, he's baptizing people, hence the name. We don't ever see him get baptized. There's the baptism of Jesus. That's kind of a big deal. So biblically, you're just off. But I will say this, John, and it is a good question in the sense that we didn't talk about baptism as a religious symbol when talking about signs, where the water saves people and brings Gibson MG back into faith. So you're absolutely right. Well done in bringing that symbolism up. You're not off at all. In fact, I would say it is one of those. It's one of the go-to religious symbols. Because the thing is, baptism in and of itself was a symbolic act that was obvious. It's ritual washing, cleansing. So of course you come out new. So bringing someone into the water and pulling them out again, they are clean. It is a religious, it is a deeply symbolic act. Because let's face it, they didn't put you in the water and then scrub you. You know what I mean? And then brush out the tangles in your hair. You know what I mean? So it's a deeply symbolic act in and of itself. And like all great symbolism, I think all great symbolism, you can talk about it all you want, but just watching it, people basically get a sense of what's going on. And so we didn't bring it up, and I'm actually, in retrospect, kind of surprised by us for not having mentioned that when it comes to this movie. But when we talk about Mel Gibson, crazy things happen in our heads.
It's true. It's true. I'll tell you. Yeah.
Very definitely a baptismal symbolism in this movie, and for all the reasons you said. Baptism is a thing that baptism is the beginning. Like you get baptized to enter into the Christian faith, into the Christian religion. It is your entryway into a new life, and for that purpose, and it is obvious symbolism. So the fact that the water is saving. But let me go further back, even John. Baptism in and of itself. That you go back. How are the Israelites saved in Exodus? They go through the water. They go through the Red Sea. Now the water's parted. They don't swim, but the water opens up to save. And the water, by the way, and you got to know this in a lot of symbolism, part of the reason it's such phenomenal symbolism is water's dangerous. It's not just like we think of water like coming from a sink, or you have, when we baptize people, we have like a little bowl and we kind of dip the water on their heads. The water was generally the rushing river or the sea. And this is where the sea monsters were. This is where death was. This is where mystery was in ancient lore, in pre-ancient myths. Like the sea equals chaos and fear. And so the idea that you go into
killing. Let's be honest. Water
so it's perfect. It's the uncertain, and that's the thing. It makes perfect sense. So stepping into faith, equaling using the water to save you, it is Christian. You're totally right. It's baptismal, but it goes further back. It goes all the way back to the Exodus. It goes all the way back to that idea of going through that chaotic place, that water, to be saved from the Egyptians. And then the water, of course, comes back over and kills the Egyptians. So, thereby completing the salvation. So yeah, totally. I think it's a perfectly apt symbol, and I don't know how we missed that.
Because it's a terrible plot device. It works wonderfully as a symbol. It works wonderfully as symbolism. But coming to Earth and not being able to stand out in the rain without dying.
Right.
You have made a miscalculation there, aliens.
Well, I agree. We talked about this before. I think it's an interesting plot point that it's not that they're trying to colonize Earth. They're just stealing our people.
You're right.
Although we are 75% water.
Exactly.
That would have been problematic.
Exactly.
Cut them open and then just start dying. So I don't know.
Right. It works better as it works well enough as a symbol that the final scene still works.
Yeah.
But the more you think about it, it's like, that's a weird.
It's better not to think about it.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
It's much easier to enjoy the movie when you're not thinking. And I think it's the movie does such a good job of creating suspense, and the payoff is the movie's so good at creating suspense that the payoff is particularly lame.
Yes.
So, anyways, I hope that answers your question, John. Go to church.
If it doesn't, man? We won't be finishing. We won't be following up next week. Let me put it that way. Write in again. And we'll answer it in a few weeks. It's not going to
I'll email you. Or I'll email you.
Right. That's not going to happen. And that'll do it. That'll do it for this episode of Second Breakfast Podcast, this week of Second Breakfast Podcast. It's the new breakfast. We've changed the menu.
New era.
But we're very, very excited. And
Second Breakfast 2, Electric Boogaloo.
And there's Phil with the Electric Boogaloo joke. Thank goodness. Thank God for you, Phil.
Never fails.
It's never not funny. It's never not funny. And so that'll do it. We are Second Breakfast. I'm Andy Roth, and that's Phil Duvall. Have a great weekend, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
The most important meal of the day, second breakfast.